Alright, hey, shalom, Akim, shalom. First and foremost, as always, before we get started, giving all praise, honor, and glory unto our power, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, the elders of Great Millstone that have taught us His truth and that we're well. And peace and blessings go out to the hopeful members of the elect, scattered throughout the four winds of the earth, that are in the hopes of receiving salvation and mercy during the time of Jacob's trouble, and that are worshiping the Heavenly Father in sincerity, in spirit, and in truth. Alright. Now in this lesson I wanted to do a landback response on a video that you see queued up on the screen of this dude, Professor Jang, pretty much just giving some information in regards of how within this whole back and forth within the US and Iran, there's been in total 9 ceasefire breaks, alright, and they've all been done by the hand of the Iranians, man, alright, but the means as to why Iran is playing this tactic is for the purpose of what we understand, pursuant to Jeremiah 49 and 20, which is to draw out, matter of fact, let me get it real quick, because I'm, I just read it not too long ago, but, you know, these damn bodies, man, I just forgot how it went. But in other words, the military of America is being drawn out, and you know, within the process of what America is going through right now, it's pretty much empty within its military arsenal. All right, of course, America has a very vast military, but within the set position of what America is standing in, all right, it's been putting in too much money within this war. All right, and just today you had Pete Hegseth give forth a speech out in it was the Senate, where he was pretty much telling them, like, look, if you don't fund 1.5 trillion, all right, 1.5 trillion to this war in the Middle East, this will be the greatest threat that the US faces. All right, which just shows you how pinned to the wall America is right now, man. You know, and I like to listen to a lot of economists. This week I've been listening to this one dude called Richard D. Wolff, and when it comes down to the, analysis and their opinions of how this war is going to play out, everybody is saying that it's going to be in the favor of the Iranians winning. You know, now of course we'll see how things transpire, but everything is pointing within the direction of this happening, man. You know, and it's all done and said for the purpose of prophecy being fulfilled, to not only escalate the third woe, alright, but to also bring forth the fulfillment of a technocracy, alright, because within this whole, back and forth that's going on, America within NATO and the EU is weakening, alright, severely, not only within its military, but also within its economy. The US dollar is devaluing, alright, BRICS, alright, within their gold standard of how their currency is working is going up within the market, and overall the GDP of America within the G7 is going down, man. So we see everything playing within the favor of America, alright, circling the drain, and the fulfillment of the prophets prophesying the downfall of America being something of a sure word of prophecy, man. Alright, so with this, like I said, within this lesson I mainly just want to target what this dude Professor Jang says within his lesson, alright, or his video, and just go from there. But like I said, let's start off here in Jeremiah 49 and 20. It says, therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he has taken against Edom. Alright, who are the modern day Edomites today? The so-called white people. Alright, and his purposes that he has purpose against the inhabitants of Teman, Teman being the Germans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Alright, and within this whole war that's happening in the Middle East, one of the means as to why the US is in there is due to the little hats, man. Alright, the Israelis. Okay, to them constantly, and even within the ceasefires, like the one that just happened a couple weeks ago, where J.D. Vance went to Switzerland to pretty much make amends with with certain Iranian ambassadors. All right, everything was going smooth until the little hats ended up bombing certain cities within Iran. And because of that, the U.S. continues to stand at variance with the Iranians, man. All right, and now they're continuing to invest more and more money to fight this war. All right, and now you have the U.S. pretty much saying that there's going to be a draft in November. All right, where the age range is now pretty much all males from the age of 18 and up. You know, they capped it at 41, of course, but that just shows the idea that the U.S. is in need of, military equipment. Okay, so let's go to this video and let it play for the first couple minutes. All right, and then we'll of course sift through the scriptures and show you how this is all pertaining to prophecy, man. All right.
Let me start today by giving you a number, and I want you to hold on to it, because everything I am about to explain over the next 20-some minutes is going to circle back to this single figure. The number is 9. 9 vessels attacked in the Strait of Hormuz since July 6th. 9 incidents in roughly 2 weeks inside the most heavily watched, most heavily patrolled, most strategically important stretch of water on the surface of this planet. And here's the part that should stop you cold. There is a ceasefire in place. There has been a signed ceasefire between the United States and Iran since June of 2026. And under that ceasefire, this is not supposed to be possible. So the first question, the obvious question, the question every mainstream outlet is asking, is simple. Why does Iran keep breaking the deal? But that is the...
And the short answer to that is because they want America to be weakened. All right. Again, brothers, when you look at Iran, it is a very impoverished country right now. You know, they're at a point where they really have nothing to lose. You know, and the only goal that they have in mind is to destroy and weaken the hell out of America, man. As they've killed their Ayatollah and they've done nothing but committed war crime after war crime. All right. They want to put America within a very constricted position right now, man. All right, and as they're continuously breaking these ceasefires, it's doing nothing more but putting America in a position where they have to continuously fund a war that they are in no fashion winning at all, man. All right?
The wrong question. And by the end of this video, I think you are going to understand why the right question is far more uncomfortable for Washington. The right question is this. If Iran can violate a ceasefire 9 separate times, in the exact place where America has concentrated the most firepower it has anywhere on Earth, and America still cannot stop it or punish it in a way that changes anything, then what exactly is that ceasefire worth? And more importantly, who does that arrangement actually serve? Welcome back to John Global Explainer. If you care about understanding the machinery underneath the headlines rather than the headlines themselves, the point I opened this week, I need to teach you one concept. Because when this concept clicks into place, the 9 attacks stop looking like chaos and start looking like exactly what they are, which is design. The concept is what I call the asymmetry of the tripwire. Let me explain it with something.
Right, man, and like, we always make the point, all right, when you go back to the history of Iran, that goes back to the ancient Persians, all right? And when you go back to that medieval Persian empire, that was a very grand empire, man. In its time, it was at its peak. No other nation was able to conquer it until Esau got into power, of course, by the hand of the Grecians. All right, but prior to that, nobody could, match the temperature of the Persians. Due to their military power and their knowledge in war. All right.
Something ordinary. Imagine you own the biggest, most expensive house on the street. Alarm system. Cameras on every corner, a private security guard patrolling the fence. You have spent more on protecting that house than everyone else on the block combined. And your neighbor, a much poorer man with no security at all, keeps quietly opening your back gate at night. He does not steal anything. He does not break a window. He just opens the gate, stands there for a moment, and walks away.
And that's what Iran has been doing within this war. Again, at this point in the game, man, Iran really has nothing to gain if they bomb the land of Israel, truthfully. Okay? So what they're doing is something far greater than just trying to get a little piece of land. All right?
Now what do? If you shoot him, you are the monster who killed an unarmed neighbor over an open gate, and the whole street turns against you. If you do nothing, everyone on the street learns that your alarm system, your cameras, your expensive guard, all of it means nothing. He can open your gate whenever he wants. Either way, you lose. That is the asymmetry of the tripwire. The weaker actor does not need to defeat the stronger one. He only needs to keep triggering the tripwire in a way that forces the stronger one to choose between looking cruel or looking helpless. There is no third option.
And like Jang is making the point, choosing either option will lead you to your demise at that point of the game, man. You know, and this is ultimately the condition of where America is at right now, man. Alright? Either answer is going to lead America to crash out. Now, real quick, I looked up this term the other day. I ran across it on a book that I was reading. It's called jingoism. And it says, jingoism is an extreme, aggressive form of nationalism characterized by a belligerent foreign policy. It involves the belief that one's own country, in this term we're speaking about America, is inherently superior to others and relies on threats or military force instead of diplomacy to safeguard national interests. Alright? And in the grand scheme of things, this is what America's gonna do, man. You know, establish this jingoism and illustrate that there's still this destroying mountain. Alright? But in reality, that fight is something that they can really not put at the forefront anymore, man. Alright? Because either way that they choose to go, it's going to put them in a position where they're in a conundrum. Alright? And again, beginning with the Apostles' Great Millstone, they've been talking about this very day where America would be pinned against the wall. And now we're here. Alright, so real quick, this is Isaiah 14, and we'll start at the point I want is in 4, but you know, we'll, just for the sake of reading into it, we'll start at 1. Alright, Isaiah chapter 14 and 1. For the Lord Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. Alright, and this is ultimately what we have coming our way, brothers and you few sisters. Alright, through the hell that we're going through this low estate of what we're experiencing. Alright, where we're at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, we're the first fired and last hired. You know, we're catching hell, but something that we see happening within the world right now is that the land of our captivity is being destroyed from the inside out. Alright? And it's all being done for the purpose of the Heavenly Father recompensing our enemies for what they've done to us, man. Alright? It says, and the strangers, alright, the Israelite foreigners, shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Most High for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors. Alright? And this is a reality that's on the horizon. Okay? This is why all heathen envy at the Israelite man. Okay? Whether it's a northern kingdom Israelite, a southern kingdom Israelite. Okay? All the heathen envious. Alright? And very soon they will finally see us in the seat of authority of where we pertain to. Alright? Verse 3, it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow. Alright? And like I said, man, through us seeing that these prophecies are being fulfilled, this is what gives us rest right now. You know? Through Yahweh's sacrifice via the Comforter, we see the demise of this wicked society, man. Alright? And truthfully, it does comfort me. And I believe I speak on behalf of all of us, brothers. It gives you the same sensation. You know? Finally witnessing the downfall of a country that is built upon nothing but the blood, sweat, and tears of our people. You know? It says, and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Alright? And that's pretty much the message of what Iran is saying to America right now, man. How has this man ceased? The golden city, once upon a time, all right, ceased. Now, real quick, all right, the main reason I wanted to get this precept is to look up this Hebrew word, proverb, which goes back to the Strong's H Concordance 4912. The word there is mashallah or mashal, all right, and it says proverb, parable, all right, but the point that I want is maxims. Now, when you look up this word maxims, just a quick Google definition, it says a maxim is a short, memorable statement that expresses a general truth, rule of behavior, or basic principle for living. All right, and the general truth that the world is slowly but surely coming to the realization of is that America no longer has that same bite that it once had that puts fear in the world, man. All right, and this is a proverb that the prophets of the Heavenly Father have been speaking about going back during the time of the apostles, all right, going out on 34th and 7th Street, man. All right. It is a very beautiful time to be alive in, brothers. All right. So real quick, let's actually from here, let's go to the root word, because I think there's a little more that we can get in the root word. All right, the same characters, mashal. It's only Strong's H 4910 is the concordance, and it says to rule, have dominion, reign. All right. I think that was basically the point, though. To make, like, to assimilate. All right, and that's what's happening within America, man. It's being put in derision, and it's now being assimilated to the said degree of where countries like Iran are in right now. Okay? And again, man, when you can feel it within this country. All right? That same American lifestyle of how it was going back prior to the vid, that same sensation isn't here anymore, man. Of course, Jake still makes mirth every now and then, but to the extent of how it was back in those days, it is very, very different. All right? And the means as to why that is, man, is because prophecy is at the forefront. America's judgment is right around the corner. All right? So let's go back and keep listening to this dude, Professor Jang. All right? Because there's some more points that I want to build that he makes light of. All right?
And I want you to keep that dilemma in your mind, because the Strait of Hormuz right now is that back gate, and America is the man standing in the doorway with the expensive alarm system, unable to figure out what to do. Okay, let's look at the actual sequence, because the timeline here matters more than any single event inside it. In June of 2026, the United States and Iran signed a memorandum of understanding, a ceasefire. On paper, hostilities were supposed to wind down. Now, keep in mind, this came after months of American escalation, after billions...
Right, and this is during the time where, Trump was talking about the gas prices are going to go down, things are going to go back to normal, you American citizens, you know how that fucking Edomite talks with his little hand gestures, you American citizens can go back and live your comfortable lives, but gas right now is going up hella, So it goes to show, man, that this is nothing more but a big charade. All right?
Spent after strikes that were supposed to bring Tehran to its knees. The ceasefire was sold to the American public as a kind of victory, a stabilization, a return to control. That framing lasted a matter of weeks, because starting July 6th, ships began getting hit in Hormuz, and not randomly. Iran began forcing commercial vessels to pass through its own territorial waters. Think about what that phrase actually means. Forcing ships through Iranian territorial waters. That is not a pirate raid. That is a state asserting sovereign control over the movement of global trade through a choke point it happens to sit on top of.
Right, and this is going to shift the whole role of how the economy works within the GDP of the G7, man. All right, and for for you brothers that may not know what the G7 is, all right, let's just look up G7 countries, all right, or what is the G7? But the countries within the G7 are France, the US, the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Canada. All right. What is the G7? The G7 is an informal form of 7 of the world's advanced economies and leading democracies. Its member nations are Canada, the countries we just listed off. And it says the group meets annually to discuss and coordinate policies on major global issues, including international security, economic governance, and climate change. All right. And within this set predicament that America has put these countries in, mind you, they're all catching hell. All right. And because of that, the GDP of G7 is going rock bottom. All right. And the GDP of BRICS is rising up. All right. Now, as a matter of fact, let's ask AI Overview. Is the GDP of BRICS rising higher than the GDP of the G7? And let's see what comes up. Boom. Yes, the GDP growth rate of the BRICS bloc is rising significantly faster than that of the G7. All right? And I bet you that this is information of last year. All right? Cuz I believe real quick, when do the G7 nations meet? I believe it's like in somewhere during fall or winter, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, 3 days in May or June, Slovakia. But okay, so that means that they just had their little annual meeting. All right, but best believe that the talks of what they were, speaking on was that of we're getting fucked up right now. But let's read this part real quick. It says, yes, the GDP growth rate of the BRICS bloc is rising significantly faster than that of the G7, meaning BRICS has much stronger economic momentum. However, whether BRICS is larger overall depends entirely on the economic metric used to measure GDP. All right, and that's understandable because the US dollar is something that's been used for centuries, But again, when you look at the US dollar, the only means as to why it has so much momentum is because of the demand in it. All right, but the US dollar is backed off nothing. All right, in comparison to the BRICS bloc, that's actually backed on gold, and that's going to put more nations in a mindset where they favor this currency because it has something that gives it sustenance. All right, it gives it power rather than just having high demand for it. All right, it says the growth rate, the economic growth of BRICS member states outpaces the G7 by a wide margin. BRICS growth, the bloc's combined economies are expanding at an average rate of 3.7 to 3.8%. Rapidly emerging economies like India and China drive this momentum. G7 growth is experiencing a slower average growth rate of roughly 1% or to 1.1%, weighed down by aging populations and sluggish economic performance in European nations like Germany. All right? And like I was going to say earlier, I bet you that all these numbers are based upon statistics of last year. All right? If you were to look at the statistics of now, based upon how this war is playing out, these numbers are completely fucked up. All right? So we see who's rising up, all right, and who's going down. And the one going down is America, man. All right? Where's it at? Okay, yeah, Slovakia. I had gone to this precept and had taken this one off. This is Jeremiah 51, and I'll start at 12 just to hit the point. It says, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, which Babylon here is speaking about America, all right? Make the watch strong, set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes. For the Lord has both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. Alright? O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Alright? The Lord of hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men, as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. Alright? And this is the condition of where America is at right now, man. Once upon a time, it was at the forefront of having nothing but treasures. Alright? But now, that role is being reversed. Alright? Let me get the 13th verse in the NLT. It says, you are a city by a great river, a great center of commerce. But your end has come. The thread of your life is cut. Man. And that's the condition of where we stand right now as we measure the time diligently in itself and we look at how America is moving. Alright? So let's go back and keep listening to this dude Chang. Alright?
By July 18th, the count was 9 ships since the 6th. 9. And Iran is doing this while a ceasefire is technically still in effect, while the June memorandum is, on paper, still the governing document. Britannica's live tracking, as recently as today, describes exactly this, repeated attacks on shipping in Hormuz despite the June memorandum still being in force. So the ceasefire exists and does not exist at the same time. It exists on paper. It has evaporated on the water. And that gap, that space between what the document says and what is physically happening, is the entire story. Now here is where most coverage goes wrong, and I want to be precise about it. The Western framing treats each of these 9 attacks as a violation, a breach, a broken promise, as if Iran signed something and then dishonestly reneged. And on the most literal level, sure, that is technically true. But that framing assumes the ceasefire was ever meant to be a genuine peace. And I would argue to you that from Tehran's strategic perspective, the ceasefire was never peace. It was terrain. It was a piece of ground to be occupied and exploited. Let me explain the difference, because this is crucial. When a strong power signs a ceasefire, it usually wants the fighting to actually stop, because it already holds what it wants, and it wants to lock in the status quo. When a weaker power that believes time is on its side signs a ceasefire, it may want something entirely different. It may want to pause in the heavy bombing, while retaining the ability to keep applying pressure at a level too low to justify a full American response. The ceasefire, in other words, becomes a shield. It caps the intensity of what America can do without looking like a treaty violator itself, while leaving Iran free to keep pressing that back gate open, one ship at a time. And this is exactly what the asymmetry of the tripwire predicts. Each attack is calibrated. None of them is a Pearl Harbor. None of them is the kind of spectacular mass casualty event that would give a president the political cover to unleash everything. They're just big enough to disrupt global shipping, spike insurance rates, and remind the world who controls the water.
And that's no longer America, man. Man, that links right up with what we just read in Jeremiah 51. You know, America was once this great whore that sitteth upon many waters, which that water represents peoples pursuing the Revelation, the 17th chapter. Alright? Now Iran has that capability of controlling what can come in and what can come out. And due to that, alright, the US is getting punched in the body. And slowly but surely, it's gassing out. You know? So this is where we're at right now, man. Alright? Lord willing, this continues to escalate until to September. Alright? There's been many talks about something going down drastically in September. So we'll see, you know. Alright, of course, there's a bunch of hearsay, but nonetheless, all arrows are pointing to the fact that America is on the downfall. Alright? So with that being said, Lord willing, this was an edifying lesson for you, brothers and sisters. Just something quick in the spirit. As I was watching this video. Alright? As always, man, ending off by giving all praise to our power. Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach HaKodash. Double honors again to the apostles, the bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings unto the elect. Shalom.